candidates. So I'm over here taking a deep breath to center. Usually I have my volume with my audio with my music on a different speaker, but can you hear me and the speaker? Can I see some thumbs? Okay. I hope this isn't blasting out your eardrums here. I will turn down the music in just a moment. So I'm just gonna wait one more minute for folks to roll in and then make sure that you all have access to my slide deck. Here is the slide deck again. And something just to, as, let's see. As Elena Aguilar says, pull back the curtain. What I like to do when my candidates are rolling in, because I do both seminar and student teaching lectures, or rather student teaching field supervision, I ask them to please repost links in the chat. So if you see something and you see someone rolling in, please just take the opportunity to paste links in the chat if someone needs them, and just look out for each other, like the community of learners we are. And I'll share screen and get started. And I'll turn my music down for now. Mute. And I'm happy to share my playlist with you a little later. That's what folks are, and not now. I think I'm sharing my playlist, but hold on, not that playlist. Great visit. So first, how is everyone feeling this morning? That's like the big question. You can pop into the chat. What's bringing you joy? What are you curious about? What is bringing you joy? What are you curious about today? That are my posed questions. What is bringing you joy this fine Friday morning? Here we go. Ta-da. Okay, so I'm going to put this in slideshow mode, and I know this is acting kind of funky. So let's ground ourselves in this quote by Audre Lorde. There are no new ideas, only new ways of making them felt. This has been a part of my work for the past 5 years. I've been an instructor and a lecturer for San Jose State University. I also work at my children's school as a Project Cornerstone co-director, working on that library book ban stuff, trying to make things right over there. So that's part of why I ask us to think about this thought. And also, I think about supervision in this more holistic way of, there are a lot of folks doing a lot of really good work. And I think that I heard a lot of conversation yesterday about how we need to connect more and really build those communities of practice. And so that's where I want us to sort of ground ourselves and root ourselves today. Like, what works for you? What works for you in your practice as a supervisor, as a mentor, as an instructor? And so that's sort of the idea behind this, going with the flow. So welcome to Going with the Flow, Cultivating Voice and Choice through Culturally Sustaining Pedagogies. I know that's a lot to encompass, so we'll unpack that a bit. I shared my name. I'm a mother of 2. This is sort of like how it started. This is, I think, my last school pick from 2017 when I was a 7th and 8th grade journalism humanities teacher, which is what I taught for about 10 years, taught junior high. And then my next slide is like, so I want to share a little bit about my journey, and part of that is rooted in like the events that have happened throughout the past few years as I have been at State. And this is what just again, makes me human. And I really encourage us today to explore more of, who we are and our identity markers as supervisors in order to discuss that with our candidates. And so, and these are my kids, and that's my girl Bic doing my makeup. And these are some teacher, like we never put these up. I mean, I didn't. So my first part today is just for us to kind of ground and center ourselves in this space. And then give you a little bit of my story. And the first thing we're going to do together, and what I'll ask you to do, is this kind of norm storm, which is a brainstorm of sorts on collaborative norms. And then we're going to come back and review some of the frameworks that we'll investigate today. And then you'll have some time to choose your own adventure, as you were. So explore some lesson plans that candidates have written up over the past 3-4 years during my supervision. And I want to just be really candid that I've worked with some wonderful colleagues at SJSU who are here for this conference this weekend and who have mentored me. And I just want to thank them, even if they're not in the room. So I always want you to start with having your materials available. So have a window on your browser with the 4 tabs. So we're going to have a 4-tab day. So you want your Google Drive open and a Jamboard, which we have. I will make sure that link is again posted, and your slides. So you'll have, those are 3. And then you want to have an open tab for exploration, because when you open the lesson plan, you'll be able to open it in a new window. So this is, in my brain, this is for me how I prep myself for an online seminar and online teaching. And so I wanted to share this part with you. So yeah. So the frameworks for my inspiration, and I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit, and the reason why is because we'll revisit it. So Elena Aguilar's book, Coaching for Equity, I read that with many colleagues from my cohort at State, and there are many tenets and takeaways, and I'll share some of those with you today explicitly, but more than explicitly, just kind of threaded within our discussion. And same with Goldie Muhammad's framework, Cultivating Genius, and her latest text of Unearthing Joy. I had the pleasure of listening to her talk in February, and it was just probably one of the most inspiring pieces that really has driven a lot of the shifts in this work, particularly in this slide deck, which has changed several times over the past few years. So here's what I'd like us to do first, without further ado. So I'm checking in to figure out all of my rooms. So what I did was I actually made 5 total Jamboards. So I think I was thinking about 4 groups total, depending on our participant count. And what we'll do on this Jamboard for about 10 minutes is what I like to start with my candidates is thinking about what centers us, like what are the core values that you want students to feel in your classroom. And for this question, this is really posing to you as supervisors, right? Like, how do you want your students to feel with you in these spaces of guidance, of coaching, of thinking about, of cultivating this way of being in their classrooms with their students? And all of this is rooted in what the heart is, which is love. So I want us to think about taking the time to imagine what this value in the middle might look like or sound like outside or in the community of learners or the larger scope inside the classroom, which is the teaching piece and the instruction piece and the coaching and guidance pieces. And then how do you bring forward those values when you check in with students, with your candidates? What do you do? How do you engage? Is it a conversation or a dialogue? What does that look like? And then how do you reinforce the beliefs and values of this cultivation in non-academic moments? So in small moments where maybe once a candidate sends you a text message and they're not quite sure what to do, how do you handle those small moments to build relationship? And so this is our first activity on the Jamboard. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to pop this in the chat. You should have edit access. Love that. I see the opportunity to learn. I see y'all posting what you're wondering about and what you're curious about. So here's Jamboard link. And let's see how many participants. So we've got 27 total, or we've got 29 of us total. I'm just going to make, or actually, Evelyn, can you help me make these 5 breakout rooms?
Yeah, absolutely. I already have it ready.
Awesome.
Want me to send them to breakout rooms now?
Go ahead. So breakout rooms. So folks, you're going to start on slide 2. The directions are on slide 1. Start on slide 2. So you have a reference. So group 1 is on slide 2. Group 2 is on slide 3, and so forth. See you back in 10. Join one. Hold on.
Cheryl, are you not able to join your room? Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm just making sure I have the slides and all the links.
Got it.
I'm heading off there.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go zoom around and check in. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So I'm sure, as with breakout room activities, once you just get rolling, it just kind of, it's like, oh yeah, I got it. So my apologies for not pasting the explicit directions in the chat. I'm wondering how it felt to sort of grapple with these questions, right? Because part of what I like to do in seminar, and that's kind of what I want, that's what I wish for today, is to almost bounce back and forth between instructing, like working with candidates, and also asking you all to put yourselves in sort of the shoes of your candidates. And when we think about culturally sustaining practices, I think about it in, well, what am I doing to embody these practices? And so I like to have my candidates start out with a norm storm, something where they're thinking about, thinking deeply about what's in the middle, like what are some ways that, what do I value here, and how does this value sort of correlate and distill into all of these pieces of my instruction and in my life. So if there's anyone who would like to share out, feel free to take a minute or two, and then I want to kind of move forward and think about, set you up for your next breakout room activity where you're going to play and do some exploration. So I'll pause for a moment here. If anyone would like to share out how it felt to kind of grapple with this with maybe strangers or maybe people that you already know in a room. Okay, well.
Wasn't long enough, and we were having issues. I'm having issues. Okay, so we only got to the heart part. That's and there are actually 2 thoughts on that one. We're slide number 7.
Mm-hmm.
this one is students should feel comforted and valued both inside and outside of the classroom.
Mhm.
And the example was given that one of the students discovered that there was cancer in their life or something like that. And you know, having to deal with that within this is very difficult. I've already had, let me see, my students before this, I had 2 students whose both mothers were grappling with cancer.
Mhm.
I had another student whose mother died during student teaching, and we had to grapple with, you know, should she continue or should she drop it and come back? And I mean, you know, life happens. So when these poor babies, I always call them babies because I'm old in the dirt. Okay, when these students end up in this situation where they're working on beginning a career and unexpected things happen. It's like, how do you support them in a way that's going to make them decide or make that difficult decision of whether they're going to stick with this or whether they're going to drop it and come back and take care of whatever the issue is.
Mhm.
That's really difficult. And it's, you know, I mean, that's just something you just, what do you do? You know, what's the right answer or whatever. Okay, that's my thought. I'm sorry.
No apologies. Thank you for sharing. And you bring up a wonderful point, and also kind of like I almost like a segue piece of thinking about how we humanize our students, right? And I think part of our work in supervision, I think, can feel oh, we're teaching through the TPEs and that's what we really need to do, right? But all of these things come up, right? Life happens. And so when we think about that, part of the work that, well, I'll come back to this, part of the work that I have developed with my students, especially my candidates, especially around things like around difficult things, we take some time after we do that norm storming and thinking about, like, what do we value most and how does that transmit and transport to with my students? How do I bring them along with me in this work of, you know, it's a collective collaborative space. And so part of what I'd like to do, and this is a monster slide, this is a screenshot from a slide from one of my conversations with students. We think about, like, who are my students? What do they need? And how do I know they're learning? And, you know, I connect these to parts of student teaching work, but you speak, Vera, to a much more important piece, which is just as we as instructors have hardships and difficulties throughout the semester, this can be some things that our students are experiencing. And in this deck, there's a slide that links to an article from Goldie Muhammad, who writes about, and this quote always sticks out to me: as long as oppression is present, students need spaces to name, interrogate, resist, agitate, and work towards social change. And sometimes this change is to rest. Sometimes it's to rest and to take a step back and to think about that in sort of a culture of, well, we're being rigorous and we're making spaces. We think about, these are some further considerations to think about with some of the frameworks that I think many of us have come in contact with, or maybe we're thinking about with introducing to candidates. Like, how am I incorporating my coaching strategies to facilitate candidate equity of voice? So do I make space for conversations to talk about hard things that are going on in the lives of my students? cultural ways of being. How am I making space for candidates' ways of knowing and being within these institutions they navigate? Like, is there a way to, we used to sort of e-walk students to the CAPS or for CARES, for support? And then what parts of instruction are we using to build critical thinking skills in our candidates so that they can help their students with this? And then bridging cultures, right? How do my coaching and instructional strategies name and make spaces for these for candidates to discuss and have talk about inequitable, oppressive environments and spaces? And so this is how I've kind of contextualized the many, many frameworks that we can use. And I want you to kind of grapple with parts of, how do we, as supervisors, take this really intense sort of programmatic issue of making sure candidates have the TPEs, while also really embedding structures of culturally responsive and humanizing pedagogy so that they have agency and choice. And so what I've done is I've put together some lesson plans for you to look at for the next at least 20 minutes so that we can debrief after in the same groups, but there's some different jams. So we're going to go to the link where the jams begin so here's where the links to lesson plans are. So I want to make sure that this link is in the chat, but I also want to make sure you can get to it. So can we just all click on this and then give a thumbs up so that we can get to this? Yes, thank you, Evelyn. So let's just make sure that we can get here. And there are 6 lesson plans, and right now I think we have our 5 groups, correct? So my thought for today, as I go with the flow with y'all, is to move forward in our Jamboard here, and this is our part 2. So this is where it starts. This is the direction 2, and these are just a few prompts to sort of think through when you're reviewing. But I don't want you to take too much time, like really grappling with all of there's a lot of info. I really want you to note it, like, what are the noticings on these lesson plans? And then which tools did you explore? Because there are a few different pieces to this work of being sustaining and humanizing. And I think I always end up going back to, who are my students? What do they need? And how do I know they're learning or growing? And so those are the questions that I like to anchor candidates in their thinking too. So just for your time and sanity's sake, just take some time in your group. So we've got room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Review a lesson plan of your choice and direction in the slide. Look what these, review some of these CSP pieces in asset framing. And there are a couple of different pieces for you to check in with if you're feeling like, well, I'm really curious what these features might look like in practice. And so instead of me sort of talking at you, I'm going to let you explore until we come back. How's that sound?
How many minutes?
So let's see, it's 10:07. I think we should go for, we have until 9:30, correct?
10:30.
Oh, sorry, 10:30. Oh, so let's come back at 10:20. So about 13 minutes, 10:20, and then we'll do some debrief. So let's about 13 minutes. Let's see what we can do in 13 minutes. Not very much time, but let's go.
Peter, I need to assign you to a room. Let's put you in room 5. Has the fewest people.
Wonderful. I am sorry to truncate your conversations, folks. There's some really wonderful work going on, thinking about all of these notions of like, how do we interpret culturally sustaining pedagogies, and who are the authors, and how do we highlight and make space for and center the authors of the works that we take from in supervision. And there's a lot to think about on that one too. So it's 10:21, and I know that I would love to hear just one highlight of your conversation from each room. You are welcome to unmute and share. You are welcome to pop it into the chat, and then really for further growth and for continuing the conversation, I'll share candidly that I have been working on this particular deck and for my candidates in seminar for a couple of years now. And what I've asked them to do is to choose a focus from the Sustaining Pedagogies chart, which is linked here and it's in the deck. And it is from the California Department of Education website. We've seen it in a few of the sessions, but my focus today was again to pull us back into your ideas of what you think this could look like, and providing agency and voice and choice to your students, and in turn them. So let's hear from group one. Is there a highlight or a takeaway that you'd like to unmute or share in the chat? I'll go back here. Oops. We can go to room 3 if we'd like, and then come back to room 1 if you'd like.
I think we were room 3. Vanessa, can you confirm we were room 3?
Yes, we were.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I didn't want to talk on about somebody else's slide. Okay, that's fine. I thought our conversation, for me, one takeaway would be how this notion of I am poems really opens up space to allow students to bring in their whole self, their varied identities. And I think for me, really is a exercise that spans K-12, right? Because you don't have to be, you can take the I am poem you could say that's a secondary kind of strategy, but you can really find other ways for students to express themselves through poetry for the lower grades as well. And so I think that would be my takeaway, is the flexibility in an exercise like this through poetry and identity, in inviting students to bring in their whole selves.
Erin, you're muted.
What about group 2? Group 2, would you like to share? There are some questions that came up here. This was a social studies lesson done in a classroom with a teacher candidate who identified as Indigenous American, as Native American. And so this was a quite an intense lesson plan. I think what we were looking at, some of the questions that came up, I think I popped into your room. Anyone want to speak out? We can move to the next, folks.
I would say I'm doubly interested now that you say that the student teacher herself was Native American, because I would see much more of a link, asking the students and getting to know the students and letting them feel like, oh, somebody's here who's representing my culture. And so I like to know that. That's good. That's a plus for me, that, you know, we're sharing our cultures and validating them in this way.
Yeah, and I think it's curious too, because in looking at this lesson plan, when I first received it as her supervisor, I did not have that information. And so we had to have that conversation. And I think that kind of brings us back to thinking about, like, who are our students, what do they need, and why do they, and what are they learning?
And they want to know about us. And so often we just remain the statues that don't give them too much away, because we have some sort of protective wrapping around us sometimes. And so I think that we need to break that down and be the mothers and the fathers to them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was, I want to hear from group 4, from team 4, because there was a really important generative conversation. And I don't know, Michelle, if you're willing to share any of what you were discussing about authorship and joy.
Yeah, I'm gonna thank you so much, Erin, for asking me. I'm gonna talk in between building a fort over here and possible screens in the background. Okay, and I apologize for it, but I had committed to babysitting long before I knew about the conference. Okay, so anyway, I apologize. We spent a lot of time. We had a lot of great notes, and Vera took some really great notes on the things that you see posted there. And I just kind of add the personal connectedness. And for me, I always run through work with our students, a topic that I find important is empathy, called reciprocal empathy, where we share our vulnerabilities as their leader, as their supervisor. I'm the director of field placement for our whole Graduate School of Education. So I oversee like many pieces of this, including our 35 supervisors that I work with, and I love it. They're great folks. It's important that we build in personal connectedness when we work with our students. As a professor, I work with our students. I focus on balance a lot, how they have to balance their pursuit of becoming a teacher, an educator, with their personal lives. So it's really important. And so that's why I share our own personal empathy. And stories and being vulnerable. What I really focus on for about 5 minutes, probably too long of a rant, is that we shared earlier, Erin shared Dr. Muhammad's book. I've read both of them, and especially I was in our audience for the first one, and this one, the new Joy book. It's important that we respect and honor our authors that we're sharing and we're building this work from, and their histories. She's an African-American woman. Her book was written because of her own personal experiences, vulnerability, and it's the historical pieces that give her the strength to write about these things. And it's important that our students know that the authors, and I'll just kind of speak for this one, and the authors I share, and the authors of color, I make sure I tell about their own personal journey and who they are as people, and then as they are as professionals and educators, because that's what she's writing for. She's writing from the background about these unimaginable horrors that African-Americans, enslaved folks carried with them, and how they, no matter what those horrors were, there was a piece of joy and brilliance and genius that came from that. So I just think it's always important for us to honor those authors that we're sharing deeply. And we speak about her book about joy is built all on the joys that she found in her research during slavery. That's what it's built on. So I just think I didn't mean to go on so long, but it's really important because we don't share enough authors of color at all in our work in education. So when we do, let's really deepen it and give our students that rich background that they need. Thank you, Erin. I didn't mean to go on so long, and I apologize for the pounding in the background. They're building a fort.
No, I got you. I just really appreciate you for that conversation and for centering that. And I thank you all for engaging. I'm sorry that there was an issue of accessing lessons. They're all in the folder for 5B. And here is the last jam. Now that we're jamming, if you can provide feedback here, and this is my exit ticket. When you have a moment today, I know we are jumping into our next space. But thank you for joining me today. And thank you for exploring and having these important conversations about agency, voice, choice, and stepping it up for our candidates by sharing more about ourselves.
Thank you.
So take it easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks for going with the flow with me. Where's my music?
Erin. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't
Not
have a
sure-
link to the next conference though. Should I pop it in the chat?
I haven't seen, I haven't
I'm
seen